Tonight at Fairmont Crest, one secret could blow everything apart. In this video, we break down Dani's shocking discovery of Hayley's connection to Randy aka Sammy and how a double identity, a suspected con partnership, and a near-poisoning tied to a $10 million policy turn a messy affair into a potential crime. We'll unpack who stands to gain, who's in real danger, and the ruthless choices Dani must make when every move could save Bill or set off a scandal that engulfs everyone. If you love intense character stakes, hidden motives, and razor-edge twists, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and tell me in the comments, Team Dani or Team Hayley? Fairmont Crest still stands with its suffocating gloss, but inside it is splitting along fractures no one wants to face. On the day Dani and Vanessa happened to catch Hayley walking beside the man with two names like two masks, everything fragile turned into a minefield. A brief flash, like the sweep of a bar light across a stranger's face, was enough to stir the slow-burning anger in Dani's chest and sketch the map of a scheme that had been hidden far too long. The fury rose not only from the sense of betrayal on Bill's behalf, but from a personal humiliation as she realized every sign that had brushed against her life had been ignored as if she were naive. Hayley always smiled gently, always played the role of the woman who could warm a dinner heavy with silence, but beneath that shell lay an architecture of moves, and at the final lever of that system stood Randy, or Sammy, or any name convenient for a plan. Dani knew this not because someone told her, but because she saw herself standing at the edge of the truth, watching the pair exchange a cold glance like people who had practiced far too long at feigning innocence. The first anger that rose in Dani was not an explosion, it was a silent shock that tightened her throat and forced her to step back and analyze every scrap of recent memory. The times Hayley vanished and returned with explanations that were just enough, the strange invoices tucked among harmless papers, the slips of body language that never matched whenever anyone mentioned insurance, the quick, slanting looks whenever Bill spoke about the future. It all rewound like a film in slow motion, and the splice that made everything lock into place was the filthy truth. Randy was a relative, an accomplice, a shadow standing in the right place at the right time, ready to push a man into a chasm using nothing more than the man's impatience and faith. Dani felt herself swept into a rage as she thought about that sweet, harmless-looking cupcake, the little treat that once made Naomi laugh at the frosting, but which had nearly become a silent instrument for signing off on a $10 million payout. In an instant, the fury stretched beyond family boundaries and struck a moral line she believed she would never allow to be crossed. Yet it had almost happened under a roof they all called home. But anger is only a beginning, the tearing from within is the true sentence. Dani knew that exposing things too soon meant her words would be ground to dust in a whirlwind of corrections, denials, and mirror-practiced smiles. She knew Hayley wasn't alone and that the people with her understood where their opponents were weak, what they believed in, and what promises would break them. Dani looked around Fairmont Crest, at tabletops polished like the surface of a receding tide that has already revealed the sharp rocks while people still pretend they are swimming safely. She saw Vanessa just behind her, wary and seasoned by the smell of secrets, and it was precisely that familiarity that kept Vanessa quiet as a kind of insurance for herself. Dani understood that in this game, the truth does not stand with the first person who speaks it, it stands with the person who has evidence, timing, and a temperature cold enough to strike accurately. The inner conflict began collapsing every barrier of reason. If she spoke now, would she save Bill or only sharpen Hayley's caution and trigger a revised plan no one could counter? If she stayed silent, would she become an accidental accomplice, and when tragedy hit, would all fingers point at the one who saw and did nothing? The image of Naomi became a needle repeatedly piercing Dani's armor. Naomi did not belong to these dark chessboards, did not know how to read the tiny letters at the bottom of insurance documents, did not catch the lightning-quick glances that traded secret messages in meetings that meant nothing on the surface. Naomi was the last bit of clarity left, the person who had nearly become a living affidavit for a plan calculated with chilling precision. Thinking of her, Dani closed her eyes and heard her own heart pounding like a knock at midnight. She asked herself when justice had grown maze-like inside her, when fear had grown so loud she considered trading pieces of the truth for a moment of safety. Rage turned inward, at herself, for letting things go too far before daring to look straight at them, for assuming the little misalignments in Hayley's behavior were merely stress, for believing people she knew would never stake a life on the scales against a sum of money. Dani began gathering fragile fragments of proof with the most careful hands she had. She checked delivery schedules, odd expenses tucked under communal budget lines, fuel receipts from places Hayley had no reason to pass if she were doing only what she claimed. She replayed every time Randy surfaced near something sensitive, every coincidence that should not have existed. She remembered the two names used in separate settings, one softer for moments that needed trust, one clipped for moments of execution. Each detail connected to the next, a chain long enough to pull her forward, but not yet thick enough to bind a creature trained to run. From there, Dani thought of Bill with a blend of pity and disappointment. He trusted too deeply in the idea of home, too steadfastly embraced what required a sane distance. His kindness was being exploited with ruthless elegance, and Dani felt a layer of guilt settle over it because she hadn't stopped him sooner. But she understood, warning by words alone now would be like throwing a rock into a hall of mirrors. Everything would shatter and she would see 1,000 reflections of herself, any one of which could cut her. At Fairmont Crest, rumor is a currency, and truth has value only when it can purchase change. Dani knew she needed more than a chance encounter and a near-deadly cupcake. She needed motive, route, and point of impact. She thought of the life insurance policy like a door hanging open for a greedy hand. She pictured private meetings, health updates repurposed as leverage, personal data skinned down until a human became a number in a profit and loss sheet. She wondered whether Randy was only an executor or whether someone higher stood behind him, someone who understood the crowd psychology of this compound, who knew how to exhaust people until they accepted any story that promised quiet. If such a person existed, where were they standing, through which eyes were they watching, and what were they willing to burn to erase their tracks? Every next step for Dani was a hard decision. She kept Vanessa within range but did not lean on solidarity, because Vanessa had her own lines of safety, her own private ballast needed to survive the marsh of power and scandal. She weighed sending an anonymous hint to someone who could open a financial investigation, but feared that impatience would force Hayley to reshuffle the deck tonight. She considered staging a situation that would make Randy say, a marked payment baited with information only a mastermind would know, but precision traps like that take time, and time was the one thing she could not count on. Could one person protect Bill, hold the assailants accountable, and still preserve for Naomi a life not stained by what she never chose? Or in this game is there always a price, and is that price a piece of the soul of everyone who steps in? Outside, Fairmont Crest still hosted dazzling gatherings where toasts traded hands like cards staking out territory. Inside, Dani quietly built a map from anger and will, linking meetups, withdrawals, and daily routines disrupted with intent. She found peculiar gaps between the stories Hayley told and the times Randy appeared, gaps like pockets of mud that would trap a leg with a single misstep. The inner tearing reached a peak as she imagined a near future. If she yanked the curtain, the scandal would detonate and today's bystanders would swarm to dissect, interrogate, indict, and then turn away as quickly as if they had never cared. But if she hesitated, who could promise that next time the cupcake wouldn't land in the intended hand, that an innocent sip of water wouldn't be turned into a life sentence for everyone involved? Dani's last thought each night was a bare question about motive. Was she doing this to retaliate for the public deception, or to keep for Bill a chance at living in the true sense? Was she seeking justice, or proving to herself she was still strong enough not to be led by the nose? She reminded herself that motive is a double-edged blade, it drives you forward, but it blinds you too. In that realization she felt the weight of choice. She needed something incontrovertible, a clean cut rather than a random explosion. She needed to tie Randy to the two names' one-man chain of evidence, tie Hayley to the money trail and benefit structure, then lay it all out before they could flood the air with smoke. And yet, who could guarantee that once she laid everything out, the people she thought were allies would not switch seats, that those she saved would not turn and ask why she did not save them sooner? In the days that followed, Dani moved as if crossing a glass bridge, the scandal and ruin yawning beneath. She could no longer tell wind from footsteps closing in behind. Every glance traded in a meeting, every offhand remark about health or appointments, became a signal to be decoded. Her inner conflict even led her to doubt her own judgment, a dangerous doubt because it softens every principle. She tightened her reins again and reminded herself the truth was already there, all she had to do was place it in the right hands with the right temperature. She considered sealing a portion of the evidence somewhere safe in case someone tried to reverse accuse her, because she knew those about to be exposed would not sit still. Above all, she kept her eyes on Naomi like a compass needle, reminding herself that this story is not just numbers, it is breath, heartbeat, survival. When darkness fell over the compound for yet another night, Dani knew the moment was closing in. She had arranged the pieces in her mind and prepared for two outcomes, a public strike with evidence stacked high enough to compel, or a silent pull of the pin that would collapse Hayley and Randy's plan without anyone cheering. She had not chosen, because each option left scars, each option clawed at the soul. But one truth could no longer be deferred: every extra day of silence was another day of placing someone's life at risk. Where is the balance between justice and safety, between a whole truth and enough truth to stop disaster? In the late quiet there were no answers, only the even thud of a heart like a countdown. And when the first light spilled across the steps, Dani knew the anger inside her had hardened into resolve, a resolve that would topple the polished walls of Fairmont Crest, or drag her down with them. Who would stand with her then, who would turn away, and who had already been wearing a two-faced mask like Randy all along? And that's where the board stands. A compound polished to perfection, a $10 million motive humming under the floorboards, and one woman holding a match. Dani has pieced together the double identity, the family tie, and the money trail that recasts a messy affair as a calculated scheme. The question isn't whether the truth is explosive, it is. The question is which fuse she lights. If she goes public, the blast radius will be spectacular, reputation scorched, alliances exposed, and the first real crack in Fairmont Crest's immaculate facade. Bill might be saved by the shockwave, but public detonations are chaotic, shrapnel flies in all directions, and people who should have been protected get cut. If she moves in silence, disabling the plan from the shadows, she might keep Naomi out of the line of fire and deny Hayley and Randy any chance to pivot. But quiet victories require perfect timing and spotless proof, and one misstep turns a surgical strike into a vanished opportunity. There's also the third path, the one no one wants to consider, where Hayley flips the narrative, turns suspicion outward, and uses Dani's hesitation as leverage. In a world where rumor is currency, it takes only a handful of curated whispers to cast Dani as jealous, unstable, or self-serving. Randy can disappear behind another mask, the paper trail can be muddied, and a cupcake becomes nothing more than a misunderstanding everyone is overreacting to. That's the cruel elegance of this game: motive can be weaponized, and doubt can be engineered. So what should we watch for next? Watch the micro-details. Hayley's schedule tightening where it should loosen. Randy surfacing at logistical choke points, deliveries, appointments, signatures rather than social ones. Naomi's routine compromised by coincidences that funnel her toward danger. Bill clinging to the idea of harmony even as the facts refuse to harmonize. Vanessa hovering at the edge, calculating which truth keeps her safest. If those patterns converge, the plan is live. And every hour matters. Also watch the money. Not the headline sums, the small, boring movements that turn ethics into arithmetic, fuel receipts that map a hidden loop, duplicate invoices built to bury a clean one, reimbursements that look like housekeeping but smell like hush. Paper doesn't lie when you ask the right questions in the right order. And watch Dani's temperature. If she turns too hot, rage will make her loud and imprecise. If she turns too cold, fear will freeze her into inaction. The sweet spot is ruthless and careful, enough fire to act, enough ice to aim. If she hits that balance, Hayley and Randy don't just lose a payout, they lose the illusion that made Fairmont Crest so easy to exploit. However this breaks, remember the stakes extend beyond scandal. It's not just reputations, it's the architecture of trust. If a community learns it can be bought off with quiet, it will be sold cheap again and again. If it learns that silence nearly cost someone their life, it may finally stop rewarding beautiful lies. That's why Dani's choice isn't merely personal. It's instructive. It tells everyone watching what kind of place this will be: a country club for secrets, or a house that can survive daylight. If you've made it this far, I want to hear your call. Should Dani go loud or stay surgical? Who breaks first if she pulls the pin, Hayley, Randy, or the social contract that's protected them? Drop your theories below, tell me what clue you're watching, and vote in the poll pinned in the comments. If deep dives into motive, method, and fallout are your thing, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on. In the next upload, we'll map the alleged insurance pipeline step by step and test whether the timeline holds under pressure. Until then, keep your notes tight, your claims tighter, and remember, at Fairmont Crest, the most dangerous weapon isn't poison, it's a story told at the exact right moment.